Okay, good morning, class. Today we're going to be recording no, there. Your test only. Oh, you got it. Okay. And so let me give one or two. Just one. And so let me give you some proper names. Sorry, just a minute. We're just waiting for the recorder.
You need to delete all the old ones.
Oh, they're still on there. Okay, so you have Dr. Soffit on your 200 Q&A number 1. Dr. Soffit, okay? So this is going to be then 200 Q&A number 1. It starts in the middle for 5 minutes called Fall in a Ditch. Were there any lights in the area of the trailer court at this time?
There are no front lights on, and if they were on around the building, those lights were always so dim you would need a match to see if they were burning. Anyhow, they were such small bulbs.
Okay, do you know how many outside lights there are or were at that time in particular trailer court?
You mean how many might have been on?
No. Do you know how many there were there at that time? How many were operating?
Oh, like I say, well, I suppose those lights, little lights, were on, one on each side.
Which building?
The utility building, wash house. But I know when I fell in that hole, I couldn't see that hangover to the building. So I fell in right next to where that machine was.
Did you climb over any dirt at all getting to the edge of the ditch?
No, I wasn't near any dirt, no.
So that I am clear on your recollection of this, you were, by your testimony, about no more than 3 feet from the edge of the curb of the island when you fell in.
Well, right there. I don't know. It could have been a little more or less. I couldn't say for sure. Right in there.
And this machine, as I understand it, was sitting at an angle, wasn't it?
Kind of, a little.
What was your purpose in going from your car to the ditch?
Well, I wasn't really heading for the ditch necessarily. I was headed for that wash house.
What for?
I was going in for that little laundry basket that I left there.
Okay, please go on.
I stopped and looked at it. It looked funny to me, but I didn't know I was standing on the edge of it. I had to be standing on the edge, but I didn't know that.
You couldn't see it?
You couldn't see anything. But I just barely moved to turn to go on around to get into the wash house, and I was in the ditch just like that. My leg went down the side and my head hit the other wall, so I had to be standing right on the edge of it.
All right, what injuries did you sustain as a result of this?
Well, I definitely broke my thigh.
Do you know the name of the bone that was broken?
Femur.
Did you break any other bones?
No.
And what happened after you fell into the ditch?
Well, my head hit the side hard, and then next I kind of saw stars and I hit the bottom, and I felt a real sharp needle-like pain in this leg.
Which leg are you referring to?
My left leg. And then there was no pain, and it knocked the wind out of me. I laid there dazed, then I got my wind because I was half on my side. So I brought this knee up here.
You are referring to your right knee.
Yes, I brought that knee up and tried to crawl out.
How deep was the ditch?
Well, it was pretty darn deep, 12 feet, I'd say.
Then what did you do?
Well, I tried to crawl out, and I suddenly discovered that this leg wasn't working.
You were talking about your left leg?
My left leg wasn't working, and I really didn't know it was broken. At first, I thought it was just numb. And I thought, well, I will just keep trying to dig out. I wore the knees out of my jeans trying to crawl out of there. And I'd go ahead and slide back and go ahead and slide back. And I finally did. I made it up. The thing kind of slanted up in there, and there was a lot of loose gravel.
That would be at which end of the ditch? West?
The west end of the ditch. It slanted up from the east to the west.
About what percent?
I don't know. I know I'd go a ways and I'd rest, and then I could feel myself slide back. Then I would dig my fingernails in, trying to keep from sliding on my hands.
Okay.
I finally did make it up to where the shovel had bit down right at the corner where it made the turn. The shovel, you know how a shovel bites down in?
Yes, ma'am.
There must have been 2.5 feet or so, maybe more.
Much more?
Not much more, maybe 3. Could have been only 2. But anyway, it had a steep area there where the shovel went down, and from there the hole sloped back. I got that far and couldn't go any farther.
As I understand it, you were taken out of the ditch the following morning.
That's right,
And where were you taken after that?
to the hospital.
And how long were you in that particular hospital?
From the 20th of April until the 8th of August.
Did you have any operations during the time that you were there?
No, I had a major break on that leg, or I guess you'd call it a major.
Who was your treating physician?
Dr. Soffit. He put a pin in it and wire in it, pulled the 2 sides together. And he put me in traction for a month when I first went in, and a cast for 2 months, and then he operated on the 22nd of July. In August, he let me go home.
As I understand, you have since been hospitalized again?
Yes, my leg was draining when I left up there.
When you left, up where?
When I left the hospital, it was draining. The longer I was home, the worse it drained. In fact, it opened up in 3 places and stuff just poured out of it.
Did Dr. Soffit know of this? Okay, and we'll get ready for your second test. And you've got proper names that come out. You have outriggers, 1 word. Okay, this is going to be test number 2, 200 words a minute, and it starts in the middle for 5 minutes, you all. How far do you estimate the island to be from the front end of the car to the end of the ditch that was nearest to you as you parked or as you were parked there?
From the end of my car?
From the end of your car to the nearest point of the ditch.
That would be where I fell in then. Well, I don't know how long that island is. It would be almost the full length of the island, however long that is.
How far from the west end of the island was the east end of the ditch?
You mean how long was that ditch?
Yes, ma'am. How far past the westernmost end of the island did the ditch extend to the east?
Oh dear, well, let me see. This is a 16-foot living room, I'd say. Where it made the turn, you mean?
I am talking about the length.
The full length of the ditch?
Yes, ma'am, where the machine was sitting.
Clear to the end of the other?
To the end of the ditch where the washing machine was sitting. How far was that from the western end of the island?
The end of the island nearest the wash house. Well, that set out quite a little ways from the island.
It was north of the island, was it not?
Yes, and at an angle.
How far then from the island was the ditch? How far from the north side of the island was the ditch itself at the point where the machine was sitting?
I'd say maybe 5 or 6 feet, something like that, roughly.
Okay, how wide was the ditch? Do you recall?
Well, it wasn't very wide because my head hit the other side. I'd say maybe 3 feet.
Do you know how far it was from the north side of the ditch to the walkway on the north side?
Oh, to the walk that ran in front of the trailer houses?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'd say there was room for cars to go by, maybe a little more, a little more. It was more than a car width.
So that I understand your testimony correctly, there was room to drive an automobile between the walkway and the side of the ditch.
Well, the end of the machine?
And the end of the machine.
Yes.
How far was the machine parked from the ditch?
Well, while I was laying there in the ditch, I looked up at it and I was afraid it was going to fall in on me.
Do you recall as you walked up to the ditch itself how far the machine was sitting from the end of the ditch?
Well, now that I couldn't tell because it was sitting next to the ditch.
You saw that?
You couldn't see well. I could see the machine. I saw that dirt piled back over there. But anyway, I stopped walking and just looked, and I thought, well, I will go on around and get my basket. And I must have stopped just right on the edge of it.
Why is that?
Because when I changed weight, that's all she wrote. I flipped in.
How far from where you were standing was the nearest point that there was any dirt piled?
Well, I'd say all the way from 4 to 6 feet. 5 to 6 feet.
That would be from the end of the ditch?
From the machine in up to the ditch or up to the dirt.
From the machine to the dirt was 5 to 6 feet?
I would say something like that, more or less.
How high were these piles of dirt? Do you recall that?
They were, I don't know, maybe 4 feet. That is just a rough guess.
That's okay.
The bucket was laying on the opposite dirt pile.
Bucket of the machine?
Yes.
Was it on top of the pile or dirt?
It was on top of the pile of dirt on the other side, on the north side.
Do you recall seeing any braces or any outriggers or pieces of metal that extend out from the machine down to the ground?
No.
On either side or on the side that you walked up on?
Well, there was tracks the thing itself was sitting on that they travel on, but there was no braces or anything like that.
So you saw no braces out from the side of the machine?
No, there was nothing.
Are you absolutely sure of that?
Well, I am pretty sure.
All right.
I didn't walk right parallel alongside of the machine, but I came in, like I showed you on there, walking right straight down.
Now, the lights of your car were on, I understand?
Yes, on dim. I drive all the time on dim.
Now, were the lights of your car shining down into the area in which you walked?
No, it was kind of angled across towards the other trailers on the south side.
As I understand your previous testimony, you walked down the edge of the island along the curb.
Yes, just got out and walked down.
When did you change your direction walking to the ditch?
Change direction?
Yes. At what point walking down the island toward the west?
I didn't change my direction. I got out and walked right straight down there, and it came out right to where I stopped.
And you were walking on the island?
The side of the island.
Alongside the island?
Yes.
How close to the side of the island?
Well, I don't know. Maybe a foot either way, you know.
About a foot from the edge of the island?
I'd say a foot, maybe more.
Did you walk on the left or right-hand side of the cars that were parked in front of you?
Evidently, it was more than that because there was plenty of room between those cars. Then I saw that machine was sitting.
Okay. And we'll get ready for your 180s. So we have on your 180 number one, bear with me, you all, Q&A, Joe, and that's it. July's also in there. This is going to be 180 number one, and remember it's convenient store with the T at the end, okay? And it's V long ENT. Convenient is V long ENT, so you all can write that if you like it. This is going to be 180 number one Q&A for 5 minutes, and it does start in the middle. Do you see the individual that robbed you on July 9th, somewhere between 11:30 and midnight of that night?
I do.
Would you point him out here in the courtroom?
He's sitting right there wearing a sweater.
You're referring to the defendant?
Yes.
The pictures that you picked out from those that the detective and the officer showed you, were they the same individual?
Yes.
Do you know whose picture you picked out?
Yes.
Whose picture did you pick out?
The person sitting over there.
The defendant?
Yes.
Between the time of the robbery and the time that the officer showed you the pictures, did you at any time see the defendant?
Yes.
When was the first time that you saw him?
It was about 3 or 4 days after the store had been robbed.
Where did you see him?
At the convenience store?
While you were working?
Yes.
Go ahead and tell the court what would happen.
Well, he would come in the store and he usually bought cigarettes. And he wouldn't even talk to me or say anything or look at me.
So when you first saw him, did you do anything?
Well, I just, looked at him and tried to talk to him. And I was startled when I saw him.
Did he in fact say anything to you?
Maybe hello.
Why were you trying to get him to talk?
So I could try to hear his voice.
At any time after the robbery, did you hear the defendant speak?
When he came in the store?
At any time.
Yes, yes.
Did you recognize that voice?
Yes.
How did you recognize it?
The tone of his voice, how deep it was, and the way he talked.
Where had you ever heard that voice before?
The night the store was robbed.
When was it that you were able to hear the defendant speak?
It was after the store was robbed. It was about the second time he had come in the store.
How many times did he in fact come into your store after the robbery, but before you saw the pictures?
2 or 3 times.
After you heard him speak on the second time that he came to the convenience store after the robbery, what, if anything, did you do?
Well, my manager and district manager were there, and I told them that was the same voice. And then I called the police.
Before July the 9th of this year, the night of the robbery, had you ever seen the defendant before?
Yes,
Where had you seen him before?
at the convenience store.
Was he a regular customer of the store?
Yes.
The second time that you saw him after the robbery at the convenience store, what, if anything, did he say to you?
I asked him if he was still working at the packing plant, and he said no, he quit. And he said he was doing some farm work or something.
At that point, did you know what his name was?
Yes, I just knew what he had been called.
Did you call him by any name yourself?
Joe.
And he responded to that?
Yes.
When had you learned his name?
About my second week at the store.
Was that before the robbery?
Yes.
How long had you been working at the convenience store before July the 9th?
A month.
All right. On July 9th of this year, your pregnancy was not showing as it is now, was it?
No, it wasn't.
In other words, it was hardly visible or not visible at all, wasn't it?
Right.
Now, you indicated that this particular person came into the store, had a white mask on his face. Is that correct?
Yes.
And about how tall did you say he was?
About 6 foot. Between 5'11" and 6 foot.
All right. And of course, you know about how tall I am here.
He looked about, I don't know. Yes, he looked about 6 foot tall.
How tall is he? How tall do you think he is now?
About 6'3".
6'3". Now, you say this particular person that you saw a portion of his face. Is that right?
Yes.
What portion of his face did you see?
From right above the nose and his forehead.
Would you describe for the jury by touching your face as to what portion of his face you saw?
From here up to his forehead.
I didn't see it myself. Would you do it again?
Right there.
So, from the bridge of the nose to just above the eyebrow.
Yes.
And from that, you recognize the person that you saw
Yes.
in the picture?
Yes.
And you had met this person on previous occasions?
Yes.
When the officer showed you the pictures or gave you the pictures, what did you do with them?
I looked through them and pointed out the picture that I knew who it was.
When you picked out a picture, what did you say?
I told him that was him.
Him being who?
The person that was in the store that night.
The person that robbed you?
Yes.
Did you have any difficulty picking out this picture?
No, I didn't have any problem.
When the officer came by to present you the pictures, did you tell him anything else? And then we have your second test, 180, and it says Joe. So same type of material, okay? This is going to be 180 number 2 for 5 minutes, and it starts in the middle, you all. Q&A. Did you tell the officers the night that they arrived that it was Joe?
No.
You did not tell them it was Joe until after you had seen this man in your store on subsequent occasions. Is that not true?
Well, I thought it was him. And I saw him twice before I told the police it was him.
Did you tell the police that you thought it was him?
I told them I knew it was him.
No. At the time, the night of the robbery, did you tell the police you thought it was Joe? And you knew Joe very well.
No, I didn't know him very well. I had known him just by coming in the store.
About how many times had he been in your store the previous month?
Every other day.
So about 15 times?
Yes.
And you had heard his voice on previous occasions?
Yes.
Did you tell the police officers at that point that this man has been in my store and I know him because I've seen him 15 times?
No.
Now, what is there that is distinct about this man's eyes that you recognize?
The shape of them, the size of them.
Well, are they shaped any different from any other white male's eyes that you know of?
I don't know. I've never stared at other people's eyes.
What is distinct about this forehead that you recognize?
The way it's shaped.
Is it shaped any different from any other white male's forehead?
I don't know.
Now, you said you recognized his voice. Is that true?
Yes.
This person had a scarf or a mask or something over his face. Is that right? And he was talking through that. Is that correct?
Yes, it would move some whenever he would talk.
It would move some?
Yes.
So you could tell then that it was either pressing his lips or his breath was making eye contact with it.
I could hear him very clearly through it.
But he did have something over his mouth, which was in fact moving as he talked.
Yes.
And you say the same person that robbed you came back in the store on 3 or 4 more occasions after that.
Yes.
Were you in any hidden position in the store when he came in?
No.
You are quite visible when you are in the store, are you not? And people would walk in the door, see you standing somewhere about the store.
Yes, sir.
And when they buy the cigarettes, they know they have to come to the cash register to pay you.
Yes.
And this man, you say, came to the cash register and paid you for the cigarettes?
Yes.
During the course of this incident, did you talk to anybody else that night other than the officers, your husband, and the district manager?
No.
You did not.
Not that I remember.
Did you see anybody else in the store other than the person who robbed you and the 2 boys?
No.
Did you see anybody sitting out in front of your store?
No.
Is it well lit out front?
Yes.
Could you see them if anyone was sitting out there? In other words, it is a glass front store. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you say you identified some photographs?
Yes.
But now when you identified the photographs, you had already seen Joe back in your store prior to identifying those photographs. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you had gotten a picture of Joe full face in your mind at the time you saw the photographs. Is that correct?
Well, I knew what he had looked like.
But he had just recently been in your store before you saw the photographs. Is that correct?
Yes.
And of course, the photograph is of a full face. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you try to cover any part of the photograph to see if you could recognize the eyes and forehead?
I did mentally. I didn't put anything over the picture.
So what you were looking at was a full face of a person who you knew well and recognized.
The picture? Yes.
Excuse me?
Yes.
And not only the face you recognized from that particular night, but a face you recognized as having numerous contacts with that face.
Yes.
Did you tell your husband that very night that you knew it was Joe that robbed the store?
No, but I had told him the next day.
Did you tell your district manager or your manager that you knew it was Joe?
Yes. A couple days later when I went back to work.
Well, when did you tell the police you knew it was Joe?
The day I finally got him to say something to me.
Well, now you say you knew it was the very next day. Is that correct?
Well, I had a feeling it was him, but I wanted to be as positive as I could be.
Well, now you say you had a feeling it was him, but yet still you say you recognized him as being the man in your store that night.
Yes.
In other words, you were not positive that night as to who robbed you.
Not that night.
And it was only after you had a chance to see him again and look at the picture that you were fully. Okay, you all have a great day. Welcome back, and make sure you get into the discussion board and start introducing yourselves and responding to other classmates, okay? Have a great day.